Hi, welcome to the When the Artist Speaks. My name is Justice Miles, and I am here interviewing Sarah Williams Gonzalez. She's an absolutely amazing dancer, educator, professor, human, and I'm really excited to interview her today about the importance of body diversity in ballet. So, thank you for being here, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me, Justice. I appreciate it.
Nice. Okay, so my first question is for people who aren't familiar with ballet history, can you speak a bit about ballet history?
Sure. Okay, so ballet originated as a social dance that was then elevated to court dance during the Renaissance. So that means we're really talking about a Eurocentric art form with a history that's over 400 years old, 440 years old at this point. I think throughout a lot of ballet's history, it's been shaped by exclusion and elitism. And that's often reflected the social hierarchies of each time and place in ballet history. So I just want to keep that in mind that the history of elitism in ballet has really been tied to the evolution of the art form itself. Going back to the early roots in the Italian Renaissance, um, ballet's origins were very much linked to the aristocracy. There was a much a distinction between social dances that took place outside, danced by peasants in the countryside, versus an upper class who danced at banquets in court as entertainment between courses, right? And so you start to see that the upper class is using the dance as a demonstration of wealth, as a demonstration of power, right? I can wear these certain clothes, I can demonstrate my skills, and I have this social sophistication, right? So court dance, which was sort of the root of ballet, was definitely a necessary skill for any of the upper class lord or lady, as far as courtship goes, as far as good training for male identifying individuals who were of the upper class who needed the fast footwork and the coordination to train in fencing or sword fighting, right? So it became part of what it meant to be a member of the upper class. And out of that developed the very first ballet, which is from 1581, called Le Ballet Comique de la Reine, which is the comedic ballet of the Queen. 1581, commissioned by Catherine de' Medici. She was a daughter of the very wealthy de' Medici family, infamous family in Italy, very well connected, very powerful, who was brokered in an arranged marriage and became the Queen of France. And when she moved from Italy to France, one of her favorite pastimes in Italy was that court dance that she decided, well, I'm going to take it with me as I transition from one country to another. And the Ballet Comique de Rennes was actually commissioned later on in her life. It was a very elaborate spectacle that was performed for her by her courtiers, not professional dancers, but members of the upper class, who were expected to display grace and refinement and that social status through a lot of processional movements and creating of different um, shapes as individuals were moving in this performance. It was about combining a story with music and movement, and that was why it was called a ballet, as well as showcasing an elite class's cultural superiority. It was not accessible to the average human being to just walk in and see Catherine's big display, right? And I think if your students were interested in learning more about this ballet, Catherine actually commissioned a booklet that she sent out to all the courts around Europe that includes images of this ballet, includes some of the story and the music, and you can probably find that at the university library, I'm thinking. But really thinking about the body in the Renaissance, right? A body in the Renaissance that was a body that was well fed, and that was a sign of social status. Just thinking about like who is dancing and what they looked at, what did their bodies look like. Yeah, while they're wearing those corsets. Let's not talk about corsets. Um, just as in this time period, the standard of beauty in Europe was that light colored skin, right? As opposed to a dark colored skin that would indicate working outdoors, right? Members of the aristocracy did not work, right? And that's how it started to develop. That's why we think of pink tights when we're thinking about ballet and what has been a part of the relatively racist history of this art form. Yeah. Going a few generations after Catherine into the court under the French court under Louis XIV, um, the art form became more formalized and even more exclusive in the 17th century into the 18th. Um, Louis XIV was known as the Sun King, and he loved dance. He thought all of life should revolve around him, and since he loved dance, that was part of that life. He himself was an avid dancer and also an avid patron later in his life when he decided that he didn't want to be dancing anymore. But he commissioned the establishment of the Académie Royale de Danse in 1661, which is really what we know as the Paris Opera Ballet now. It's evolved over time, but the academy was really institutionalized to make an art form that was elevated, that the average person could not do. It was more technical. It was becoming of an art form that would reflect the grandeur and the greatness of the Sun King himself. So he wanted it to be specialized. He wanted steps to be increasingly difficult. And again, his dances, the dances were being performed by people from noble birth, right? It wasn't like if you were a sheep farmer that you would have a lot of time to go and learn these dances, right? You would have to be a member of the aristocracy and have the time to dedicate to the rigorous training to be able to perform Baroque dance, which was becoming the ballet. It was not ordinary people um, were not given the opportunity to participate in ballet um, under Louis. And then as you know, as as French history goes, um, it ballet begins to professionalize in the 18th century, but still is very much tied to elite circles. Um, in the 1800s, after the French Revolution, so thinking very early 1800s, call this the Romantic period of ballet. The upper class are really those who are represented on stage alongside some commoners. If you think about ballets like La Sylphide or Giselle. But Napoleon is more interested in conquering and wars as opposed to allocating funding towards the ballet, and so less and less funding is invested into ballet in France. And we even learn, and we can actually see how dancers at the Paris Opera, who were not skinny at this time, really turned to prostitution in order to survive in the late 1800s. Especially if you look closely at the paintings of Edgar Degas, you will see those patrons as part of ballet history, right? Versus over in Russia in the 1800s, Russia didn't have a rebellion against the nobility and the Tsar until the 20th century, which meant in the second half of the 1800s, ballet was booming over in Russia, who were paying to bring Europeans over as part of their court. The Russian court spoke French as they were bringing the best of what they thought was the best of Europe over to Russia. And ballet was very tightly controlled um, in that second half of the nineteenth century. Thinking about the classical period, that might be ballets you might have heard of, like The Sleeping Beauty and Swan Lake, where there are always really favorable portrayals of the upper class and of nobility on stage. Um, but again, in that period, it's only the privileged people who could afford to train at prestigious academies in Russia, and it wasn't really until the 20th century that ballet began to really open up to a broader range of people because there were barriers to to entry. There's a documentary called The Children of Theater Street, which is you can actually see where they are physically measuring children to make sure that they have the correct proportions of what builds a good ballet dancer, right? Do they have the proper amount of turnout? Do their legs have enough plie and stretch in them? So it's dating back to this time in Russia where they're trying to figure out what makes a good ballet dancer and what person does not make a good ballet dancer. But if you do look at pictures, because we do actually have cameras by the late 1800s and into early 1900s, the dancers at this time are not thin at that time, right? They are an average dancer who is just known for their presence, right? The athleticism hasn't really kicked in until the 20th century, where ballet became even more codified and its standards very rigid, right? There's all these schools that come out with how to really train a ballet dancer and what is that ideal, right? In the 20th century, we start to see the demand for very slim, very long-legged, very flexible dancers who could reach new heights. And particularly that's with George Balanchine and Balanchine's emphasis on the perfect ballet body. You know, someone who is tall and thin and very little body fat. And that becoming a very defining feature of what it means to train and perform um, ballet in yeah. And so Balanchine is really trying to push the boundaries of what ballet could be, what could be danced about, how fast ballet could be performed. He famously wanted to see bones dancing, and he would grab the collarbones of dancers and effectively exclude any body that did not fit the physical mold of what should he thought ballet should fit into ballet. And there are a lot of ballet companies and schools who not only adopted this sort of narrow ideal of what a ballet dancer, who a ballet dancer could be, but continue to this day to adopt that model, making it harder for anybody outside of this body type to succeed, especially in the professional ballet world. And I think that there are a lot of dancers who have fought against this sort of restrictive ideal and worked to find their own place within dance history. But I think that elitism in ballet has really, there's been a lot of physical attributions that have been barriers, as well as racial and class barriers, right? Because historically, as the Eurocentric art form that ballet is, there were very few opportunities for dancers of color to join major companies or schools. You can read writings and interviews by dancers like Catherine Dunham, Tally Beatty, who were not allowed to take ballet classes in the studio with white dancers. Instead that they had to literally stand outside in the hallway and learn what they could from the hallway or from the dressing room. And you can see even today that many ballet institutions are predominantly made up of white dancers. Dancers of color are horribly underrepresented, not only as dancers, but as within leadership roles like artistic directors and choreographers. And I think that part of that is also, if you think about class, right? All the way back to the roots 400 years ago to now, right? Class being a major determinant of who could afford to pursue ballet professionally. Um, as ballet has spread into a global art form, often seen as like a luxury, something for the wealthy, the privileged. When you consider the cost of classes and costumes and travel, I do whatever I can to help my pre-professional students that I work with to get to ballet intensives every summer. But 5 weeks of training, $10,000, it's highly cost prohibitive if you think about barriers that are still within the history, right? Um, I think that, ballet dancers have been seen as elite performers, graceful, delicate, and unattainable. relating back to its history, right? This is in stark contrast to the working class public. And I think that, when we think about ballet, we think about those lavish costumes, the high profile performances, the elite patronage that ballet has received. And the ballerina's role has been sort of this symbol of beauty and refinement and moral purity, um, qualities that have been exclusively tied to the upper class, not always being challenged with other views. So thinking about barriers that do exist as far as relating back to the history, right? The training has been um, prohibitive to many. There are scholarships and programs that exist to actually help individuals to be able to integrate into ballet, but they're still limited and they don't necessarily address systemic barriers that prevent working class or minority students to pursue ballet, especially at the highest level. And so I'm just thinking about sort of these elitist roots that ballet has had, that has sort of left a lasting impact on the art form. It's not in only shaping the physical standards, but also in the cultural values with ballet as the culture that it is. Um, the emphasis on a select few excelling in ballet, the body type, the race, the class, it's all led to a legacy of exclusion that is beginning to be addressed in our times, thank goodness. And I feel like ballet is transitioning from an exclusive form for the wealthy and really moving towards something that can be a bit more inclusive. And that's only because there has been and shall continue to be sort of a push for the diversity, equity, and inclusion and representation across body types, ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds. Um, so I think that as more dancers and choreographers and educators challenge this history, these entrenched norms within ballet, I think we are going to see a movement towards a more inclusive art form with a broader range of bodies and identities and backgrounds, and where they are valued and represented. And I think that that change is pretty vital for the future and evolution of ballet as an art form.
Wow, so much richness, Sarah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the historical context and all of that. You are really a person that has like a heart for social justice and diversity in ballet, and especially for also the importance of diversity of body type in ballet. Can you speak a little bit more about like the importance of the ballet world becoming more inclusive for different body types and body type diversity?
Yeah. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that ballet should be about inclusivity, where all bodies can express themselves and can be celebrated. I think limiting ballet to one specific body type excludes a lot of really talented dancers and movers. And not only that, but it also really perpetuates harmful stereotypes, harmful, emotionally harmful for spirit. I think that embracing body diversity opens up the art form to new creative possibilities, a broader range of expression. Apollo's Angels, which came out about a decade ago, said, ballet is dead. And the point is that if ballet is not dead and there are people who are loving and working in this art form, it needs that creativity. It needs that life breathed into it. What's the point in studying dance history if it's a dead art form? We live it, right? And it's important for to show that ballet is for everyone, right? And that all bodies have unique strength and beauty, and that can be celebrated. Every body, physical body, is unique. Every body is capable of dancing, and um, period. It's 2024. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yes, definitely. I remember I took your ballet class at UNM, and you're just such a phenomenal teacher. What are some things that you do as a teacher and a professor to inspire and uplift, these generations of dancers that you're working with, and what do you do to kind of celebrate diversity of body type in your approach as an educator and dancer?
Yeah. I think maybe if I can share a little bit about my background in the dance field and then head into that a little bit. I guess I want to preface this by saying that I'm 6 feet tall and I have been for a really long time. And more often than not, I have been the person in the ballet room who weighs the most. Um, I started dancing at a really young age, and I often faced the limitations that those traditional ballet ideals that I was talking about are a part of. And have worked to, and I continue to work to overcome the challenges that ballet presents by embracing the joy that ballet brings me, and also tied in with that belief that anybody can dance. Um, I started out dancing I was in an after school program. My parents needed me to do something after school because they had to work in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that led to an invitation to start taking classes at Jordan College Academy of Dance, which was the pre-professional program connected with Butler University. And Butler is known in this country as one of the leaders in the ballet field. And I trained at Jordan in ballet and tap, and eventually in jazz and modern and hip hop and flamenco even. This is a side note. I danced alongside my brother. And my brother, as happens in the ballet field, got all the parts that I ever wanted and was able to dance professionally. And um, I developed a very deep love for ballet. I love the musicality, the patterns, building the technique, trying to understand the pedagogy of like how do you build a dancer. And I also developed some pretty thick skin as far as I feel like you have to, being the biggest and the tallest dancer in the room, and always put in the back row of choreographies if I was even like cast, uh, right? And physically trying to make my body fit into a mold that I did not fit into. I forced my turnout, I stretched my feet, I overstretched my splits, I pushed into my hyperextension, and it's all because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like all of the much thinner dancers that I was around who were getting all the positive reinforcement from the choreographers and the teachers. And from a financial inclusion perspective, dance training was really, really expensive. And my parents worked so hard. They own their own business, but dance clothes and shoes and warm-ups, all the point shoe accessories, like even a pair of point shoes, $100 easy, right? And I was on scholarship growing up, and I wouldn't have been able to afford to dance without that scholarship. And part of that scholarship was that I was assisting with the younger dancers' classes. And assisting is really how I discovered that I wanted to become a dance teacher. And if you hear that saying of like those who can't do, they teach. I was like, well, actually, I want to become a teacher because I believe in investing in other people and I want to help them achieve their dreams. And that's really sort of why I went on a journey to become the best teacher that I could be. That for me, that meant I learned French. I lived in France for a year so that I could really pronounce ballet terms. I took a deep dive into dance history, ballet history. I read as much as I could. I've watched as many ballets as I could. Um, I tried to understand the different schools of, why do they train in this way or that way. Um, and I really embraced the philosophy of one of my teachers at Butler. His name is Larry Attaway, and he would say, dance is a cycle. I teach you what somebody else has taught to me, and the cycle continues. And thinking about being part of that cycle of a tradition that is passed from body to body, and really embracing what that meant, which meant that I went on to study dance at college. I went to Hope College in Holland, Michigan, And I entered as a dance education slash accounting major. I thought that there's no way I could make a living as a dance a person in the dance field. So I was like, I need accounting as a backup because I don't think I can make it. Um, Spoiler, you can make it without an accounting degree if you want to. Um, but at Hope College, I met one of my teachers was Amanda Smith Heinen, who danced for the Joffrey Company, and she also completely changed my approach to ballet. Like she taught me how to not sit into my hyperextension. I had a She literally saved my knees and is the reason that I can walk today. And I thanked her for that earlier this year. Um, but really, I had a closed mindset as far as like, ballet is everything. Is the root of all the dance. No way. She just opened me up to the new possibilities of what it meant to have a healthier relationship with ballet, including having boundaries. And that was life changing for me. And also while I was at Hope, I was able to study abroad in France. I spent a semester in Paris studying at the Centre de Danse du Marais, and training in the French school, including with Patrick Dupont, who was a principal dancer with Paris Opera. And then from there, after I graduated from college, I applied to a couple of master's programs and was rejected very quickly, except that I got a job as a French assistant, a language assistant, and I moved back to France for a year, where I was teaching English and taking a ballet class a week. And in that year, I missed dance more than I ever have in my life, and I knew that it was like something that I loved so deeply that I wanted dance to be part of my life in some way for the rest of it, because for me it was like, if I'm not dancing, what am I doing with my time? It's I don't feel like I'm myself. And so I looked for a master's program. One of my mentors at Hope, Maxine DeBrine, recommended that I get a master's in dance history because I didn't have that professional performing experience. She was like, some everybody always needs dance history. You can study more dance history. So I found the program at the University of New Mexico, the Masters of Arts in Theater and Dance with a concentration in dance history and criticism. And so I basically, culture shock, moved from France out to New Mexico, never having been to New Mexico, um, to pursue more education. And as much as Amanda had opened up my mindset, my mentor at UNM, Marianne Santos Newhall, changed my whole perspective on ballet and on dance, right? Because I no longer just see myself just a ballet dancer. I see myself as a dancer, and not just as a dance historian, but a dancing historian, because again, I like to feel the movement, right? It's not just about boring pages and lots of books. It's like it's feeling the movement and breathing life into it, and passing it on from generation to generation. And Marianne, one of our classes, we read a book called The Gift, which is talking about dance. And we talked about dance as a gift, right? That I have been given this gift. It's a part of this cycle, and that I am able to give this gift to other people. And that's part of the generosity that's inherent in this art form that we do. So and I continue to work with Marianne to do today. We still do our dance history work. We were just rehearsing this morning. So, but she has absolutely changed my life and changed my perspective in a very, very positive way, and helped me open up my mind. And while I was pursuing my master's, I got a job at a hotel because we all have to pay the bills sometimes. And I did my master's alongside Marisol Encinas, who is the executive director of the National Institute of Flamenco. And I helped her with her dissertation right before she had to turn it in to get her master's. And she was like, "Oh, you can write. You should come write grants for the National Institute of Flamenco." And so I've been writing grants for the National Institute of Flamenco for more than a decade. Um, I've been an adjunct at UNM for the past decade after I graduated, primarily teaching dance history, dance appreciation, and ballet. And I also have worked at Keshet Dance and Center for the Arts for the past decade as a teacher, a company manager, rehearsal director. It's a nonprofit, so you have to wear many, many hats in building up the pre-professional program. But I remember the day that I was able to quit my job at the hotel, and I was only focused on the many jobs, right? The flamenco, the UNM, the adjuncting, the working for Keshet, the fact that my entire professional life was supporting artists and growing in my own artistry and becoming continuing to learn, right? Becoming the best, uh, being able to give my best to this field that I care so much about. I feel very blessed, and I hope that I never stop learning, and I hope that I never stop growing in dance. I've been so blessed to receive scholarships. I received two scholarships from the American Ballet Theater, Project Plie scholarships to go study the American Ballet Theater National Training Curriculum, which I'm certified in from pre-primary through level 5. I've studied and I'm certified in elementary Laba notation from the Dance Notation Bureau. It's all part of continuing to learn and grow and helping that to inform me as a dancing historian, a teacher, a choreographer. And I love having discussions. I love um, helping others to grow. And deep down, I felt like I myself was not good enough to dance as someone who is 6 feet tall and large. And I know that I can just say that, after over 30 years of an evolving relationship with dance and with ballet at the center, 2 years ago, I decided to audition for a show here in Albuquerque, and I was selected to dance by Laurie House. And that was the first time in my life that I was paid to dance in a show. And maybe it's just the capitalism, but it was certainly validating to have an experience where I was paid to do this thing, that my experience does have value. So I don't know that I need it in hindsight, but also because I do know that it has value, but it's um, as a teacher and as somebody in the dance field, I do believe in breaking down barriers, whether it's relating to the body, financials, history, and I've worked with a wide variety of dancers from a wide variety of backgrounds. And I want to encourage all the dancers that I work with to embrace their unique selves, their talents, and to challenge the standards that exist in the dance field. And I'm all about advocating for um, inclusivity for sure. As far as the original question that you asked, Justice, I in my teaching, I strive to create an inclusive environment where students of all body types do feel welcome and do feel valued. I take my own experiences and I learn from them, right? So whether that's always being in the back, I when I choreograph, I make sure everybody has an opportunity to feel like they are part of each part of the stage, because it is sometimes fun to be in the back and it is sometimes fun to be in the front, and the middle's not bad either. um, but I mean, being the person who has literally gone into ballet classes and been ignored by the teachers, I make sure that I am always talking to every single human being, every single person who's in that classroom. I would not ignore a student ever. And as a teacher, I prep my classes to meet each student where they are. I think about each individual student as I'm prepping, and I try to think about what I can give them, going back to that idea of the gift, so that each person has something that they can focus on and we can work on together. That nobody is left alone, nobody's on their own. I encourage students to focus on their own strength and flexibility and their unique qualities rather than thinking about conforming to what is the ideal, what is the perfect the perfect body, right? I think all bodies are already perfect, right? Like your body's perfect, my body's perfect. We have what we have, and we get to embrace it, and we get to uplift what we have. It's exciting, right? Like you as a performer, Justice, you have phenomenal stage presence. Like it is just it's a beautiful thing to see and to uplift and to, I mean, why would anybody want to like turn the light off on that, right? Like we need to shine bright lights on the things that we all do so well. I do this exercise sometimes from time to time, that I call keep or toss, which is where I get out a whiteboard and we have a conversation, with the dancers about what they would want to keep and what they would want to toss from ballet. Maybe your students might want to try it. So I come at it from a perspective of like, let's not erase the history of ballet. The history of ballet is what it is. Let's acknowledge it, and let's see if there's a way that we can move forward in a way that is less harmful, emotionally, and less harmful physically, to the body. And it's always so interesting to see what the people in the room, come up with, as far as, some people who have, a lot of history with ballet and have a lot to say, and some people who don't. So let me share quickly a um, a photo. This is from the last session that I did at Keshet. And you can see, from this group, like they wanted to keep perhaps some of the rules. They love the sensation of leaping in the air, right? Length, articulation of the feet. They love the joy, right? Maybe realistic turnout as opposed to everybody having to have 180 degrees of turnout, coordination, community, magic, right? Grand plie was on the line. A lot of time Grand plie goes in the toss. They don't need it. Don't need it, right? Don't need the perfectionism, don't need the anxiety, don't need the racism, the presentation of gender, the sexualization of bodies, the judgment, the pressure, the hierarchy, right? If you are dancing on point, you are superior to other people, right? Something that's good or bad. I'm good at tendus. I'm bad at tendus. I'm good at pirouettes. I'm bad at like we don't need those sorts of things. So that's an example of that. I think we are running out of time.
Yeah, this is so powerful, Sarah. Thank you so much. You are such like a genius and an incredible woman and amazing. And it's just been such a pleasure to have you today. Thank you so much.